Up next is a conversation with Dr. Sherry Allen Johnson, Martial Art Hall of Fame, spiritual teacher and guide, and some consider him the grandfather of medical Qigong in this country. He's a prolific writer, covering the topics of Daoism, Buddhism, and Christian mysticism and martial arts. I couldn't think of any better person to have in my first episode to someone that I consider my teacher for the last 2 decades. And he was supporting me through every time of struggles and change and transformation in my life. I owe him more than I can express in words. So hopefully you find benefit out of this conversation. And if you do, please subscribe to the channel and give us a like. Without further ado, Dr. Johnson. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure, Diego. You have a lot of advocates and you master different systems of martial arts, spirituality, and Chinese medicine. What is the things that make you go forward in your path? If you have to look at, I don't think maybe you didn't know, like when you come out to this world, but at some point it was like a divine plan. And when did you see there was something else other than that you planning? And what does it took for you to believe in that?
Actually, I owe all of that to my first Kung Fu teacher. I studied judo and wrestling and karate and taught karate for a while, and then I wrote about it in my autobiography. We had a praying mantis Kung Fu guy come to our school, and through a series of events, I was quite impressed, and I began to look for a Kung Fu teacher. And when I met my first Kung Fu teacher, he sat down with me and he said, "Johnson, this is a way of life. It's not just a hobby." And I'm thinking, okay, just teach me cool stuff. But he was right, and as he began teaching, he wouldn't stop. He just kept on adding more stuff and then sewing it all together. So I went through many different stages of not believing and then realizing that it's true, and then having to completely alter my life for the new information that I was learning. And at that point, I remember once he was very secret about his life. He was in a special unit in the special forces. So he said, "Johnson, I'm gone for the week, so no classes this week." And I was thinking, cool, I can get together with my old karate brothers. And when I went to get together with my karate brothers, they hadn't changed. They now had several different stripes on their belt, but their attitude, everything about who they were, and hadn't progressed. And we sparred, and they were really easy to defeat because of the training that my Sifu had given me. And all that happened is, instead of bringing us together, they truly hated me. And now I was upset because I could never go back. And I remember talking to my teacher about it, and he was laughing, and I'm like, "No, I hate you. I wish I had never met you." And he goes, "I know, I said that to my teacher." And I was shocked. I go, "Really?" He goes, "I'll tell you where you're at. You've learned so much, you could never go back." I go, "Yeah. And now you don't know where you fit." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Welcome to my world." He goes, "In this system, you have the martial arts, you have medicine, and then you have mystical studies that are all sewn together. This system came from monasteries, and that was part of their living. They don't separate them, so one will progress to the other. Then when I met my second Kung Fu teacher, from Master Wong, he would say, no, that's the progression. As a martial artist, you learn to defend yourself. Then you learn medicine because you get injured, and then also you've injured other people, and you have to fix them. So you go right from martial arts into healing. And as you begin to do healing, you see the bigger picture. You begin to see how the spirit, which are thoughts and feelings and emotions, begin to affect the energy field, which affects your health and healing. And so you go from martial arts to healer to priest. And at that point, you begin to understand about how thought and intention affects energy, which affects matter. And it's the whole progression. Once I got to that point in my training, I was hooked and I could never go back. And it kind of set the foundation for my future.
Do you think the Buddhist system is unique compared with other ones in the world, or like other systems, they just strip it away just to make different systems and just basically follow money?
Yeah, the filling the rice bowl type of training. I think that I know for the Chinese systems, at least for the systems that I've studied, both in the Buddhist and the Shaolin, and then the Wudong and the Xingyi, Bagua, Taiji, it depends really on the teacher, but they're all specifically taught the same thing. If you learn Qigong, there's martial Qigong and the Neigong training, the inner body skill. Then there's healing Qigong, where you enhance the energy in the 5 inner organs and the yang organs. And then you have the spiritual Qigong, which is striving for quiescence and awakened perceptual awareness. And so when you do Qigong, they're not really separated. They just teach you this for this stage. And then as you evolve, they start changing the types of Qigong. And then from there, once you get to a certain point, then your awakening perceptions shift the way you heal, shift the way you train. Everything is set in that way. Currently, from what I've noted in the public, they use it like a business. So you'll get a little bit of Qigong and you'll get a little bit of this martial training in you. But originally it was all integrated, all as one particular type of journey, as it were.
And do you think that is because of the secrecy of the training, or is because the teacher didn't have the teachings, or it's just...
Kind of both. I've had, I remember, Diego, I had this one famous, really famous Kung Fu master. He came from San Francisco, and he wanted to go private to learn my Neigong training. And I was shocked. This was, I guess, when I came back from Colorado, so it was like in mid-'80s. And I'm like, why are you, because he had books, he had seminars, and he was very famous. And I go, why do you want to learn from me? I'm a white guy. And he goes, because you have the Neigong training. And I go, but you're Chinese? He goes, yes, but you know that in our tradition, only the oldest brother gets the Neigong training. Everybody else gets forms and such. So we're withheld because the oldest brother usually is the lineage holder. He passes it down, the master passes it down to him. And I'm in competition with my oldest Kung Fu brother. And so he's learning from the master, but he's not teaching it, because in that training, you have notoriety, you have power, and it helps to fill the rice bowl. At that point, he can do things that the other students can't. So it's about that training. So I know that you have the training, so I want to learn it from you. But the stipulation is you have to promise never to tell anyone that you're teaching me. And I looked at him and I go, okay, but you pay double. He got all this. He goes, why? I go, because you will never give me credit. You'll give it to your teacher. Your teacher will have big face, and all I get is money, and it's worth nothing compared to the information that you're getting. The information is priceless. And so the way I was taught is that the senior teacher will choose one or two students to pass the information. Everybody else gets forms and things like that. Sometimes the master dies, and then the information is missing, and the student gets a small fraction of the training, and they're left to pull it together by either studying with other teachers or asking questions from other seniors to get the information. But what happens really depends on the teacher, their history, and the system that they're passing on.
And a lot of times when that happened, you ended up with mishmash of things that don't make sense. Yeah.
Yes, that's why we always say challenge everything. Qigongs are like prescriptions. They create a certain state, and then you move to the next state. You don't want to do the same type of training for 20 years. You're stuck in a rut, and you're wasting your time and effort. Your teacher should say, okay, you start off with this until this energetic state is embodied. Once that happens, you'll have these different manifestations. Once you feel that, then you qualify for the next training, because the energy will start pouring that way. And at that point, then you go on to sometimes special diets, sometimes always different meditations and thoughts, postures, breathing, and thoughts that help to escalate and enhance the training.
And with that training comes responsibility and comes with more training, yeah?
Yes, the problem with the training is that it's real and that it works. And all of a sudden, what you think is really fun and cool, it's not. All of a sudden, there's so much responsibility, because now you're aware of things that are outside the box. All of a sudden, you understand that this is how this situation arose. This is the responsibility of this. What am I to do this with this? What am I? Sometimes it's devastating for the students. Diego, we always tell the students, and they're always zealous, but sometimes it destroys relationships, because when you destroy your old nature, you also destroy the old support system that maintained that. And for you to rise above it, the people are supposed to shift and change. Now, when they don't want to shift and change, they need a villain. They need someone to blame. So they'll blame you and then turn on you, and it's quite normal to have couples split up because one of them is suddenly experiencing awakening. They're aware of different things that they were never aware of before, and they want to share it with their partner, but the partner refuses to grow and to move on. And so the partner, instead of growing, will attack them, and their friends will attack them. It's just human nature. We talk about it because although you hear it, when it actually happens, it's painful. It's quite painful.
So having thousands of students and the pattern of outgrowing limitations and expose certain flaws per se in a relationship just because those people got together just to create a support system or denial system, if you will.
Right.
What do you advise for someone that's going through that or start doing trainings, like any esoteric or spiritual trainings that brings transformations? How do you approach it in a relationship? And sometimes it's people that have been married for a long time, yeah.
That's a good question. My wife and I've been married 4 times. We say the first 3 were testing. And what really changed in all of that was me. And at that point, with my current wife, we've been together for 15 years, and we grow together. she has the same type of spiritual walk, the same type of thirst to evolve. So we're always blind to our own patterns, but the idea is setting up boundaries compassionately. And so what we do is that we stop and go, okay, who taught you to act that way? Who taught you to treat the person like that? Who taught you to treat me this way? Because we learned it. Someone taught it. So did you study? It's either a parent, an older sibling, or someone that they valued. They grab onto their thoughts and their actions, and they're ingrained inside of them as a part of survival. Then they bring that into the relationship. So both people have different patterns that don't belong to them, that they learned from these different people they valued. As you evolve, you will outgrow your parents. You will outgrow their patterns if you're looking to evolve and grow. Otherwise, you'll dig in and just, we call it looping. You do the same thing over and over and you don't evolve. For people that are married or couples to evolve, they have to be willing to evolve. They have to go, okay, I choose not to be this way. But to point that out to your partner, because your partner's unaware of it, you have to be loving and kind. You have to set some ground rules and go, I'm not aware when I'm acting out, so please tell me, but do it compassionately so that I'm free to awaken. A lot of times with couples, they'll attack each other, and the minute that happens, they move into an adversarial relationship. They're no longer mates, they're adversaries. And so we always say every relationship goes through a progression of three. Goes through the hearts and flowers, goes through the chaos stage, and the new beginnings. The new beginnings only come after both people die. So the hearts and flowers, when the endorphins settle down and they begin to realize that each one is acting out different patterns, they hurt each other. So this is where the chaos stage comes in. And for them to evolve as a couple, they both have to die. It's not just one, it's both. And so they both take responsibility and go, okay, I'm committed to be with you for the rest of the tour. For that, I have these things that I need to feel safe in you too. So you work it out as a couple. And then at that point, then you start with the new beginnings, because the part of both of them dies, and then a new them starts again. And so it's a very healthy cycle that goes in. But in most relationships, especially now, they'll get to that chaos stage, dump the person, and then start the cycle all over again. And that's where you get all men are crazy, all women are crazy. It's not them. It's the person locked in the loop. And the minute they go into that chaos stage, the chaos stage is actually healthy because it allows them to break the imprinted pattern. But if they run from it, they need a villain, so they make the individual an adversary, and then they move on and they start the cycle again. So for couples, it's a matter of saying, okay, first we have to have a goal. Our goal is to stay together. Okay. If the goal is to stay together and we've invested time and effort in this relationship, then it needs to be based on honesty. And I need to feel safe. You need to feel safe. We need to feel supported. So what is required for that? And you work it out that way.
And also is patience, yeah? Because a lot of times when I think couples, they made the mistake is like, well, I already went through it. Why is it taking you so long? Because that's the process. Yes, so one goes through it, the other one goes through it, and a lot of times the person who went first is like, mistaken, yeah. So what you do in that situation? How you gain that patience? Because it's part of the process too, yeah.
Right. It's a part of loving each other enough to go, I understand you're hurt. What's the youngest you remember feeling this way, and who was it at? Because there's something in the clinic we call transference, and the transference is when the patient either blames the doctor or falls in love with the doctor. That's not limited to the clinic. It's also in relationships. So in relationships, sometimes one mate will accuse the other of different things they haven't healed from. They'll either become the hero or they'll become the villain. So what you do is, to get out of the transference, is go, I understand that hurts. What's the youngest you remember feeling this way? And who was it at? And what that does is it allows each person to go all the way back to the original trauma and have support. Because a lot of times when they have the trauma and the memory, they're not feeling supported. So they stuff, they hide it, and they act it out over and over because they're blind to that. If they don't see it, they can't heal. And we always say you only can heal what you feel. And to feel, you have to be accurate in where this began. If you have the support system of your mate, then from there, at that point, it gives them hopefully the courage to then grow out of that, and instead of accusing their partner. And we always say this is important because if not, you'll pass this on to your kids. All the parents are a combination of different memories and experiences passed down from generation to generation to generation. And that's why we say that it's called the death of the ego fear. They're part of them that has to die to evolve. If they're not willing to die, they can't. And so I always tell them, study your parents because that's who you become. And and a lot, I hate my mom or I hate my dad. I go, that anger is generated energy, which causes you to act like them. It's don't shoot the messenger. That's just the way it is. The more dynamically opposed we are to these certain patterns, the more etched they are. So the whole idea about forgiveness is for us and not for the other person, is for us to break the energetic cords that connect us to the memories and connect us to acting out these patterns. So the forgiveness represents like a death and a rebirth to the original you that was here before you accepted their patterns.
So you mentioned something that I think you are the only persons that I hear about. You need to feel to heal. Yeah. So a lot of other systems that I come across, what they do is they compartmentalize it. Yeah. So they put it in categories, and it's more like, oh, this happened, and it's more like a knowledge. What is so essential or relieve in your physiology, the experience?
All energy has a charge. And so sometimes the charge is so strong, you need to release it before you can actually heal. This is why in our tradition we have things like beating the bag and screaming and doing the ha sound and then the no sound, and because the charge holds on to the memory and the pattern. So for them to evolve and to move on, you can't go, well, I've forgiven everyone. You go into a state, what we call being pathologically peaceful. Those types of people are really scary because they're so disconnected from their true feelings that all of a sudden they can just lose it and snap. So you go, no, you've been wounded. You've been hurt. It's okay. We all have. You're not the only one that's been wounded and hurt. Use as an exercise to release and get rid of that charge. And once they can start releasing the charge, you keep them in a safe environment to where they can, okay, now it's time to heal. Because I can promise you that after a while of screaming and shouting, your voice gets tired, your body gets sore, and you want to move on. But first you need for it to release it from your body. People stuff, and when they stuff, they rob their immune system to suppress these different types of energetic conditions. That's why in the cancer clinics in China, once the patient is able to feel, then we can target their specific disease condition. But until then, it's a waste of time to give them different exercises or different things because they're so armored and internally guarded They can't feel. And so no matter what you give them, it's ineffective. So we have to break the patience by breaking them, meaning that we have to break their armor, get them to feel. The minute that happens, you have two things, anger and grief. And so the anger comes up, and then the grief, and then the sobbing, which is actually really healthy. We say that when the heart closes down and the soul closes down, it goes into 3 stages. First, you have the anger, which sets up the boundary, and then the grief, which honors who you are. If you're setting up your anger and you're grieving and you're made fun of and that doesn't work, you go into the next stage. The anger turns into depression because your boundary system is not working. And then the grief turns into despair because you're beginning to lose hope. In that second stage, if nothing happens and they're still being oppressed or treated wrongly or cruelly, then they go to the third stage of survival, which is indifference and minimization. They don't care. Nothing bothers them. So when you take the patient or the student out of that denial system, they go back. First, they get depressed, and they go into despair, and then they turn to anger and rage. Usually it's at the doctor who's teaching it because it's healthy and it's more safe to attack someone you're familiar with. And that's why I understand you're hurting. What's the youngest you remember feeling this way? That works with not just patients, but with your mate. When your mate comes out of denial, then we always say that they have to feel safe to come out of denial. If they don't feel safe, you can't force them. So sometimes when we're impatient because we've made it and your mate hasn't, it's realizing they don't feel safe. So it's like, what would make you feel safe to talk about this? Think of it like an empty box that you're dragging. It's pulling you down and it's robbing you of life force energy. You have free will, so you can drag it for the rest of your life. I always use the example of Ebenezer Scrooge, and he had his partner Marley, who was shackled with boxes. Those boxes are all the histories and stories that he haven't healed from. He's carrying with it. The idea about healing from that is that freeing yourself from that.
So as a part that you have to trust and believe, because they might never get there.
Right. They have to feel safe. And if they don't feel safe, sometimes it's loving them enough to work with a professional, because a professional is a neutral ground. Sometimes they've been hurt by the things we've done or said that they don't trust us.
And sometimes they got attracted to people that is similar behavior that the one they hurt in the first place.
Exactly. And then you think of it this way. If they're attracted to the same type of pattern as the person that hurt them, and they're trying to get that person to like them so that they like themselves, the minute that person shifts and changes, they feel betrayed. They feel abandoned. They feel I no longer supported because it's a subconscious challenge. So when you work together to evolve, it's first understanding that we're imprisoned by these old patterns that we have to release and let go. Once you understand that, then go, well, what do you want? If you're at an impasse, you refer them out to someone you trust, like a therapist, that can help them go through these hurdles. If not, then that's when the relationship falls apart because, again, they don't feel safe and they feel betrayed. One of my teachers explained this to me, and he goes, I can put you in a room with 100 different people, hook you up with this person. But if you've had an extremely violent childhood and I put you with this person that's very loving, within a month, you'll create a very hostile environment because your interpretation of that hostile environment is intimacy. And I go, you're kidding. He goes, no, that's why That's your interpretation. It's a subconscious manifestation that works with the conscious mind. That's why you get the people that will start sabotaging everything, even though they have a perfect environment, because they're not used to it. It has everything to do with their self-esteem. That's why in any type of energetic spiritual work, it's about breaking and rebuilding. In any mystical tradition, the first year is purgation, rebuilding, and cleaning out. Because before you awaken their different clairvoyant, clairaudient perceptions, you want to make sure that they can handle what they're feeling and not using these different filters to interpret what they think it means as opposed to what it truly is. So at that point, it's about allowing them to heal from that.
And that's the result. The particular system, it goes martial arts, because you need to break. And then it's like you get to work with the emotions, and then you get to do the scholar, and then ended up being a priest. Yeah.
Well, with my fighters, we used to fight and then sit down and then process. I learned this from my teacher, and at first I didn't want to share. And he goes, no, you have to understand that as you begin to share, then these are your Kung Fu brothers and sisters. You don't want them to be vulnerable on the street. If you take advantage of them because of certain patterns that they're blind to, you want to expose that to them because they're your Kung Fu brother and sister, and you're a family. So in that, you want to protect them with this truth. And everyone starts sharing. Now, at that time, I had Fort Ord was here, and so I had a lot of special forces guys coming for the class. And when we shared, it seemed like we all had the same father. It was amazing to me. And I remember one of my students, who was a carpenter, he was Robert, and he would sit and he'd go, oh, all of this, my dad this, and he goes, you guys, you're all whining and stuff. And he's talking to special forces guys, and we're looking at him and I'm going, denial. Well, Robert had a girlfriend named Kim, and they were together since high school. And I had met his mom and dad, and I mean, they were cruel and real distant and mean. And I was just like, wow. And I met Kim, and I understood that she was exactly like his mom, and I could see why he chose her because of familiarity and convenience. She was just exactly like the mom. After some time, they finally split up. They had been together for 17 years, and through a series of events, she went on. And so he got together with a woman named Linda right after Kim. And he was like, okay, we're going to do this. She goes, okay. Well, then we'll do that. She goes, okay. After 2 weeks, he just fell apart. He knocked on my door. I opened the door, and this Robert's big guy. He's just like, he's crying. He's like, my mom threw me down the stairs. She locked me there. This happened. I'm like, and all the memories are coming back. And I'm holding him, and he's a big guy. He's crying. He's sobbing. And he goes, why is this happening to me? I go, you were with Kim, so you never changed the pattern. You're now with Linda, who's completely different. And all the armoring and all the patterns aren't working because she's supportive, and you've never had that in your life. And because of that, all your boundary systems fall because they're not effective. And now you're understanding what all of us were talking about as these memories come up. They cause you to be blind to different things. And when we look at it for self-defense, you don't want to be blind and closed off. You want to be awakened to your perceptual awareness. When you're blind and closed off, you become vulnerable to different types of attacks. And so that's why we talk about it. It's not because we're trying to be touchy-feely. We're trying to remove the things that make us vulnerable to the outside. And so that's why we share. And what happened with Robert is after a couple of months of being with Kim, his perceptual awareness and his clairvoyant skills awakened, and he became an incredible healer. And all of that just because it shifted in his environment.
So we this is we following the path of like the martial arts, medicine, and then spirituality per se, or priest training. So why these stories that we thought that we finally heal from, they show up in the next layer on the spiritual training?
Very good. The stories go deeper. The purpose of the stories are lessons. In the spiritual thing, you look back and now you see the cause and effect. You understand why that happened, and it empowers you with the ability to help others. And as you reach out from your own history and your own embodiment of what they're struggling with, it allows them to trust you because, oh, no, I know what you're going through. I went through that too. And this is how I freed myself and got out of that pattern. And so the stories cycle back because we always say that, no, they're gifts. They were given to you. They're part of your evolution in this tour. So you were given these different things that some were horrendous, but you're not the only people or the person in the world that has gone through that. You have other people that have been through so much worse. So as you heal from this, you now qualify to reach them and to help them because it's all about service. It's all about reaching outside of ourselves and then helping others. Otherwise, you're selfish. So that's why we go. In the first level, it's about survival. In the second level, it's just about me and surviving and being good. In the second level, it's about healing. It's about me and them. In the third level, because it's a spiritual, you're now being taken care of. And so you can look at the history and understand, this was a very painful time in my life. And this is how I got through that. And this is the skill, the gift of wisdom and knowledge that I learned from this encounter. And this is how I can use it as a tool to help others. And that's where you go from martial arts to healer to priest. The whole thing about being the priest is you're supposed to be an elder. You're supposed to have the knowledge and wisdom to help the younger as they're growing up. Nowadays, they have different interpretations of what a priest does. But in all truth, in its proper definition, a priest is an elder that you can come to that focuses on you and helps you to evolve to the next level. They become your support when nobody else, when everyone abandons you, they hold the ground for you, so it gives you time to awaken and go to the next level.
So what do you think is that? Because it's like, a lot of times when in society, they look at different priests for different lineage or different traditions, and like they categorize them, the one that's lesser than the other one. What do you think that happened with that? Why society now is looking, and the more that we, I think, in this time we separated for what the Sangha is, with the community, with the church at some point represented for us.
Right.
Why you think is such a distance now on that?
It's because when you take spiritual trainings and you make it into religion, then the idea about the religion becomes a corporate organization. So it's about the survival of the religion. So it's about making money, about supporting things, and it's not what the original teachings were meant to be. So when we talk about the evolution of going from a martial artist to a healer to a priest, it supersedes the different ranks and the different traditions because it's about the person's heart. I remember sitting down with one of the elders. Sorry, Dean.
That's okay.
Sorry. I remember sitting down with one of the elders, and he was telling me, he goes, you see me up sharing, and you look at me and you think I have all this knowledge and wisdom. And he goes, but my hero are those guys that set up everything, that set the chairs, they make it all possible. There's something called group karma, and group karma is all of us sharing in the same mission. When you take that teaching and put it into a religion, then it's about a showboat. Instead of everyone sharing the mission, it's about this one individual. And that's why we usually say, no, everything is about helping them point up, not towards themselves. But when it comes to structurized patterns, sometimes what happens is that the person tries to stand in the limelight. When that happens, they hold on to the information, they dole it out little by little. It's about filling the rice bowl, and they're not actually working with the individuals to evolve. When you get the elders in their proper position, then they challenge the kids to take accountability for their action. And sometimes people don't like that because they go, no, you need to take a look at this. You're using your position, you're misusing it, and you're manipulating people. In the position that you have, you're becoming a bully, and you're using that power structure to manipulate and control people. And that has accountability, that has karma attached to it. What you need to do, or what you may choose to do, is go, okay, how can I help this individual? How can I help them evolve? And that's why we say that when you are working with real priests, it's not about the religion. They will support anyone that comes to them. It doesn't matter if they're Daoist, Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, Hindu. They go, how can I help you? I understand you're a soul that's evolving, and for some reason you've been put in my life. How can I help you evolve to the next level? What is it you need? And then that's the family.
It's a big way of feeling attracted to now Daoism or like Buddhism. What is the misconceptions that you have seen that happens when I want to be a Daoist priest, I want to be a Lama, and they're good intended, but it's like, well, you need to be aware of all these things.
Right.
So what are some things that you have seen?
When I was studying, when I first started studying Chinese Kung Fu, I came in from a Christian perspective. So I didn't want to do energy because that was of the devil. And I had all of these misconceptions that sometimes when you trust the wrong person, then disinformation is being passed. This is the one thing I love about the Buddhist teachings, where they say, no, challenge everything. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's good. Challenge it. And if you find something that you can embody that will improve the quality of your light, and you can then embody it for your growth and for others, then do that. So we begin to look at everything. We always say that, okay, for the Christians, it breaks it down to two things. Love the divine with your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. Everything else was added later, it became a dogma. For the Buddhists, it's really simple, that your suffering comes from your attachment. When you attach to people, places, and things, that's where your suffering comes in, because you're trying to hold on to something that's temporary. So it helps. I love this because of their psychology. At that point, you go, okay, your nature, your core is unconditional love, great gratitude, and great joy. And when you're not coming from that, you've dropped into one of the 6 realms. You're either in the hell realm and you're angry and mad at people, places, and things. You're in the hungry ghost realm, and you're grieving, or you're in the animal realm and needing and wanting and mine. You're in the human realm and you're competing, or the demigod realm and you're jealous of what other people have, or you're in the God realm and feeling entitled. But you're not compassionate, you don't have joy, and you don't have that great gratitude. That's why we say to get back to that original state, you count your blessings, and that brings you joy, and then gratitude, and then brings you joy, and then you get to be loving. And for the Taoists, the idea about the Taoists is just to live in harmony with heaven and earth. These were the original teachings before they became religious. When they became religious, then the Taoists would compete with the Buddhists, and so they would borrow from each other. And then they would also compete with the Christians. So the structure of the temples became whoever was making the most headway, getting the most imperial support, they would follow and change and modify their programs. Like we said, when it comes to a religion, the idea is the survival of that structure, because it's an organization. Instead of the teachings for transformation, it's a survival based on what you can see, what you can get, what you can acquire, and it becomes more political. But if you can strip that all away and go to the original teachings, they all live in harmony. You can be a Taoist, Buddhist, Christian, Muslim. I mean, you look at all the core teachings, and it's about living in harmony with the divine and living in harmony with each other and nature. So I always look at it like the misconcept is sometimes in movies, we have the mystical enigma of the Taoists being elusive and having all this mystical power. The Buddhists being connected to the divine and having secrets that only they know. The Christians being the chosen few. They're the way, but they're all the chosen few. They're all have that potential because they all have the same radiant core. That's why we say, look, you're not a man or a woman. You're a light. You're a radiant light. You're not this culture or this race. You're a radiant light. The goal of the radiant light is to shine. So whatever your current vehicles are, whatever your body is and whatever you surround yourself, is just a product of your journey. The goal in all of them is to let that radiant light shine. And so we always say, well, what steals that radiant light? These old feelings, these old emotions, these old stories, because I have to shut that down to hold on to these.
And that's what we talk about, being the breeze pointing up, and like the emotions, and like having the staffed emotions, so we can again have that clear connection with the divine.
Right.
So being trained in so many systems, and what is the core things that you can find of similarities between them? Because I assume, as like if you look at the divine is the center of the hub, and the farther away from the hub, there's all the different roads. So the farther away they're fighting, but the ones in the middle, they're getting closer. Say, oh, you're doing something similar that I do.
Right.
What was that? What was those core things that you have seen across the board with all these systems?
You know, there's an old Chinese saying that only when the master is at the top of the mountain can he see all the different paths that lead up to where he's at. Usually when they evolve from, it doesn't matter what tradition, usually when they evolve up to a certain level, they quit fighting. It's not about being right. It's about doing the right thing. So that way it frees you to support everyone in their personal belief structure, because you know that all of them will be challenged to evolve. So what they all have in the same is that all of them require accountabilities to evolve. It's all about the accountabilities. And so they have their own codes of conduct to create their virtuous states. Okay, they all start off with dualities, the right and wrong. And this is essential because at that point, you can make decisions based on those things that are more radiant, which we consider right, and the things that are more toxic to the system, which are more turbid and dark. So because your body absorbs that energy, the goal about doing the right things is to free the different veils that we've enveloped to radiate light. So all traditions have those accountabilities, the codes of conduct, the virtues. That will bring them into the study of energy. When that happens, all of them have their own ways of working energy, using sound, using visualization, using light, and that segues into healing. All traditions, it's either personal healing or helping to heal others. They all have those things in common. After that, then they evolve into the final level, which is the fusion of everyone, loving everyone. And so the duality becomes a singularity when you realize that all things work together for the good of those who are walking with the divine. You begin to see the bigger picture. You'll be able to look back and go, this was horrible in my life, and it closed all these doors. But because this happened, it caused me to go this way. And this was a wonderful event in my life. And you begin to see the storyline. I'm 70, so when I look back, I can see all of the things that I felt really enraged by. And I go, thank you. That closed these doors and it forced me to do this. And so many people benefited from those decisions. And so that's why we say the duality shifts, because you learn to do things as a natural progression. And that's why when you meet these different elders and these priests, even though they don't have the ordinated title, they have that compassion that's innate in their speech and their actions, which qualify them for that. So that's the thing that I look at all these different traditions that they have in common. And I've seen, Diego, other things from the Egyptian and Hermetic. And now, granted, you always have those individuals in all traditions that are in high positions but abusing their positions. And that's everywhere. But that's the human nature. But if you can strip that aside and look at the original teachings of that system, you'll find a loving, supportive energy. And that stream is what you want to follow to the mountaintop. That's the one. I know that many people have been hurt by nuns and priests from all traditions. I mean, it's prevalent in this world. But if you can push that aside and look at the original teachings, you can still find the freedom that puts you to the mountaintop of where you're seeking to go.
So going back to the duality of things, yeah, so like you say, most traditions have it. And the reason, well, I assume that the reason is because they need a new anchor, yeah, like a North Star.
Right.
To deprogram the programming the mom and dad did, or whoever raised them, or the culture of raising. So they need a new set of a book rule to create their own version of it, yeah?
Right. You need to challenge the original imprinting. We call it the higher power, because if you don't challenge the original printing, then in all truth, your mom and dad become your gods, and you become subservient of their imprinted patterns. People don't like to hear this, but it's true. I remember I was working with one of my students. I was putting him through soul retrieval, and he had a very angry alcoholic father, and his name was Hugh, and we used to tease about him because we thought he'd always did drugs. Because you'd ask him a question, and he was brilliant, but he'd roll his eyes off and tilt his head, and we're like, wow, the 60s were hard on Hugh. Well, when I put him through soul retrieval, I found out that Hugh didn't do drugs at all. It was his father. He'd be at the breakfast table, and he'd ask him a question, and if he didn't answer, the dad would come up and smack him. And so when anyone asked him a question, he would go into shock. I remember it was devastating when he told me that, because in retrospect, all the teasing I did about him, I felt so ashamed and embarrassed. And so I made it a plan to help Hugh get out of this state. And so I explained to Hugh, I went into the whiteboard and began to write things down. And I go, okay, you have the father, which is the father imprints a subconscious mind for most males. Okay. You have your exceptions, but for the most part, in Hugh's particular case, it's true. I go, who's your higher power? He goes, what? Who's your spiritual authority, the higher power? He goes, oh, I don't have one. I go, oh, Hugh, you believe in the divine. You may not believe in religion, but you have your core, you have a relationship with the divine. He goes, no, I don't. I go, then who's your higher power? He goes, I'm my own higher power. I go, okay, let's hold that for a second. And I drew, I go, this is your subconscious, and you have two sides. This is the dark side, we'll call it Dad, and it imprints the conscious and the subconscious mind. On this other side, we have usually the divine, a higher power. We'll erase God or the divine, and we'll put Hugh. So he goes, yes. I go, so this is the higher power to Hugh. He goes, yes. So what you're telling me is your dad is your God and will always be your God because you can never rise above his initial imprinting. And he screamed at me, that's not true. I go, Hugh, this is your life. Don't you? All I'm doing is writing it out on the blackboard. This is what you've determined. If you don't have a power higher than the initial imprinting, you cannot rise above it. So what you're saying is that for the rest of your life, you will do what you'll be subservient to your father. And he goes, no, I believe in God. I don't believe in shit. I go, okay, I just need a starting point. We need a higher power than the initial imprinting. It's not a religious thing. It's a spiritual thing. Your soul, your radiant light of your soul is connected to the higher core. It's beyond religion. It's your birthright. You have the right to connect to that radiant source. And then all these different religions are trying to explore it. You have that capacity, but you have to get above and understand what's happening with your consciousness, what's happening with the subconscious patternings, and how to free yourself. The idea about being a teacher of spiritual and metaphysical teachings is to show you how to free yourself from the culture, to free yourself from the initial imprinting of the parents, how to go straight back to the core self. That's why we go, look, a good spiritual teacher will always point up. It's not about us. We're just a library. We're like the coach. Catch the chicken, Rocky. Catch the chicken. We're encouraging you to go straight up to have your own personal connection, and then we're supporting you with different teachings that will awaken that radiant light inside of you, and then help you take that radiant light and be of service to others who are still trapped and imprisoned in their ignorance and in the darkness.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so it's like that's the whole thing. Like I'm noticing, the more and more that you study different patterns, the black and white. Yeah, so the duality is good, about the evil, and a lot of times for many individuals that is the end. But everybody else, everybody has their own patterns and all our own limitations. So what would you recommend for people searching for something? So searching for a different experience, searching for a teacher. What is the quality that you would recommend someone to look for?
Well, that's a good question. In a teacher, I would encourage you to look for someone who's compassionate, who focuses on you, because it's about your evolution and your growth, and is very honest. Because I've met other teachers that they have these experiences and they'll share them with me, and I go, "Did you share that with your students?" They go, "Oh, no." I go, "Why?" "Well, I don't want them to know." I go, the goal about being vulnerable is that we learn from each other's mistakes. That's how we grow. None of us are perfect. we've chosen different obstacles when we were raised to overcome these hoops and these hurdles so that we can evolve as a soul and so that other people can evolve from our, not just our failures, but our how we overcame those failures. So you want to be with a teacher will be honest with you and go, yeah, I struggled with that, and this is how I overcame that. Because if they can overcome it, then you can overcome it. And this is the downside of taking a teacher and making them into a mortal and a deity. In all religions, they'll take the founders who are human and deify them. When that happens, the disciples can't embody what the deity did. They're a god. So we say, well, why did you deify this individual? Well, because it supports the religion, because we were competing with the other religions. And if they're very honest, they go, no, this individual's teaching was life transforming, but the teaching was dying out and we were competing with other religions. So this is how we survived as a religion. But in truth, the teachings associated with this individual are to awaken this inside of your three bodies, your physical body, energy body, and spirit body, and will help you evolve. So the mythology is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's about your personal relationship and growth, and you want a teacher that will be at least honest with you with that. It's the horrible thing about studying all these is I researched everything. And then I had a person who was responsible for making encyclopedias, and he had me research the researchers. And so he said, before you write about these topics, because they're really charged, research the researchers. And then from there, then write your book based on that. So you want to be with a teacher who researches the researchers, not to believe things that they say because they said so or because their teacher said so, but they can give you tangible proof of what this does, how this belief system and this particular theology or this particular doctrine is good for you because it awakens this. And once it awakens this, it will free you from that. Once you have that freedom, then you can do these other things. So you look for the cause and effect.
Thank you. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
No, you've been quite thorough.
Thank you, Sifu, for your time.
Diego, thank you.